So I'm Annie. I am currently a project manager in a pharmaceutical marketing agency. I graduated from St. Joe's in 2021 with a degree in communications and then minors in English and graphic design. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but currently live in New York City. So I was very recently in your shoes. I have tons of experience in trying to apply to jobs, internships, and just trying to figure out life after graduation, and also just trying to figure out jobs while being in college. So I'm open to all questions that you have, and I'm happy to provide any advice that I can give you based off my experience. So the current job that I have is the first job that I got out of college. My daily tasks are mostly managing my internal team. So I have three separate brands that I manage. On each brand, there are about 20 individuals that I have to effectively communicate the daily tasks to. So it's a lot of telling the team, hey, this piece is with you. We need you to prioritize getting this done so we can get this out to the client. A lot of projects are ever moving. There's projects that I've worked on that have been in an entire year spanned, and there's also projects that have gone through 1 week. So it's a bunch of different variations and projects that I work in. A quick synopsis of kind of the projects I work in is if you've ever seen any pharmaceutical ad, that's essentially what I do. I see and execute those, oversee and execute those ads to the finish. So I create the budget for them to let the client know how much this is going to cost them. And then I create a timeline to let the client know how long this will take us to execute it and get it to them so that they can put it out. And then I also just make sure that the project is being executed in a timely fashion within our financial budget. So this was the first job I got out of college, and it was not necessarily what I thought I would get into when I graduated from college, but I absolutely love being a project manager. So a little tidbit from that is just be open to what comes your way because you never know how it will kind of just work in your favor. I think I would have said something in the graphic design or fashion industry. It was something that was always very interesting to me. I really enjoyed being able to create something and other people being able to enjoy what I created. I also really loved writing. I just never really wanted to pursue that as a full-time job. It more so wanted to be a hobby of mine. So when I was a junior senior, fashion and graphic design were the two jobs that I really wanted to pursue. And I tried to do internships in those realms and I tried to apply for full time jobs in those realms as well. So it's kind of funny, in my opinion, that I'm doing the complete opposite of what I thought I was doing. And I'm not upset about it in any way, shape, or form. So when I was applying to jobs, I was applying to a lot of graphic design and fashion jobs, and not my resume didn't necessarily fit the bill for someone who was trying to apply to jobs in those realms. So I made a really good connection with someone, the HR person from my company at an SJU career fair. She and I connected really well. Right after she and I connected, she sent me an email saying, please make sure you send your resume my way. I want to keep it on file. So when we do have openings, I can consider you for one. And while I was applying to a bunch of jobs that I thought I would be interested in, and I wanted to actually work in those industries, she and I were constantly in contact. And I had a little bit of a difficulty once graduating from college trying to get a job. Remind you, I graduated in 2021, and that was when COVID was still pretty prevalent. And it was kind of hard in the job market to just get a job because of COVID and economics, just the whole economy in general. So while I was applying to jobs, trying to get into those realms, nothing was really sticking. And she finally reached out to me saying, hey, we have an opportunity for recent college graduates. I was wondering if you'd be interested in it. And I took it up because this job required me to actually be in the office in New York City. So it was always a childhood dream of mine to move to New York City. And I just thought it kind of all worked out perfectly. It wasn't necessarily something that I foresaw for like wanted to do, but it provided me an opportunity to have a very solid job and a interesting industry, and it allowed me to also move to New York City. So things kind of just domino effect from there. And I took the interview, everything went really well. And 2 weeks later, she was like, "Hey, I need you to get on the next flight to New York City because you're going to have this job and we need you in person." So it just kind of worked out that way. I've been out of school for only, well, it'll be 3 years this spring, but I've been a full-time project manager because when I'm going to backtrack just slightly to talk about what I first did when I first started at my company. It was an
Right.
office coordinator position. Essentially, it's just a position that this company has for reaching recent college graduates that slowly dips your foot into agency life. Agency life is very different. It's very fast paced. It's a lot at once. So a lot of recent college graduates might get overwhelmed in that position. So they thought a nice way to slowly acclimate recent college graduates into this industry is as an office coordinator. So an office coordinator does exactly what it sounds like. You go into the office and you make sure everything is set and sealed in the office, make sure that all the little nuances behind the scene for the company is set and sealed. And that's just what I did. So I did that for 3 months. And then after that, they slowly acclimate you into either being client facing, where you spend your entire day communicating with the client on the needs and the wants that they want from us as an ad agency, or you spend your time internal facing as a project manager. I didn't necessarily want to interact with the client. I think it can be very challenging at times, and I preferred having the challenge of the internal instead of the external. So I decided to go in the project manager route, and I've been a project manager for a little under 2 years. Yeah, so I think something that's very special about that role was they understand when you graduate college, it is a very different lifestyle than going from having 5 classes a week to working 9 to 5 every single day. It's also an adjustment to be going into the office a lot. It's also an adjustment trying to figure out how you fit into corporate America. So they teach you tons of little skills to help you get ready for a full-time position that you need to be moving a lot of things. Like I said, I manage 60 people. Managing 60 people right out of college is overwhelming. So they move you very slowly. So once you get to that point, it kind of just seems you're very used to it. So some of the things that I learned is making sure you're effectively communicating. My job as a project manager, I liaison between every single department. I tell one department, by the way, the client wants this by Friday instead of next Monday. So we need to actually get this done right now. What can I do to help you prioritize this and take things off your plate? I had to do a lot of communication with internal and external as an office coordinator. So that really helped me realize that it's okay to, tell people something needs to get done and this is when it needs to get done by. We did a lot of organization. Being organized in a full-time job is very important, and making sure that everything is set exactly the way it needs to be set, figuring out what prioritizations need to be each day. I had a to-do list, and I would just kind of throughout the day mark number one, this is my biggest priority for the day. I would do number two, this is my second, this is my third, this is what I can hold off until tomorrow. So always try to set yourself up for success and prioritize what needs to be done today, and then try to then figure out what can be held off for tomorrow. So two of the really big things that I learned as an office coordinator is communication and prioritization, because those two things will bleed into the rest of what I do as a project manager. I'll give you a little timeline. I did the fall career fair day at St. Joe's my senior year. She and I connected. We had a really, really phenomenal conversation, and it was a personal conversation. It wasn't really all about like, this is why I would be really good at this position. It was more so making a personal connection that would make me memorable instead of just being like, this is why I'm phenomenal. This is why you need to give me a job. Most people, when you're interviewing, want to have a little personal connection to see that you are human and that you will get along with their fellow employees and coworkers, but they also want to hear what you are able to offer. So her name is Jackie. Jack and I hit it off. We had a really good conversation. She talked so highly about the company, and she made me very interested in wanting to work into an ad agency. So I provided her my resume, and she just was like, thanks, put this on file. Didn't really hear from her until like the fall, I mean, mid spring. And I actually followed up with her and I said, hey, I'm applying to jobs, was wondering if you had any entry level jobs open right now. I would love to apply for one. She said, not available right now, but I'll keep you in the back of my mind when one does open. So time went on, and I would say she reached out. I graduated in May. She reached out to me in August saying, we have a job opening. I think you'd be a great fit. Would you mind if I submitted your resume? And she did. And 2 weeks later, I got the job offer. So it did take me a little bit of time after college to find a job. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It takes time. And like I said, sometimes you end up somewhere that you didn't expect to be, but it was the best possible like position for you to be in. Truthfully, probably not. I think it was good for her to see that I was still very interested in the company. And it kind of just reminded her that, hey, that I had this good connection with this almost recent college grad. Like, she would be perfect for this fit if that role opened. So I think it is important to stay in contact with someone that you connected with and just kind of follow up. Say, hey, wanted to see if there was any openings. I know that I've seen some on your page, wanted to see if there's any openings that you may not have posted yet that I could fit the bill for. And the position that she told me about wasn't on their website. She just kind of knew this role was opening and she wanted to grab me as fast as she could. So, like I said, make sure you stay in contact with people you connect with, because you never know. And I did that with a lot of people, not only with the HR person at my company, but with a ton of companies. And just because they rejected me from one job doesn't mean that they won't consider you for a different job. So just always stay in contact with people, because you never know. Don't burn a bridge. Like, never burn a bridge, because you never know where it can take you in the future. Yeah. So at my company, I know on my brand, we just won 10 million extra dollars. So that's a lot of work for one individual to do. And that's just not going to be effective in my brand, in my industry, if there's only one person doing all of this work. So once they assess that they got an additional $10 million that are going to be in our bucket this year, they realize that there needs to be more project managers, more editorial people, more people in the art industry, more copywriters, blah, blah, blah. So once they do realize that there is opportunities coming our way, and that's a giant chunk of money, and they're very excited to be working with us, you don't want to blow that. So they try to move very efficiently when finding new people, but you also don't want to just kind of like hire anyone because you're desperate. Especially in agency life, there's a certain personality that fits, and it fits well. So that's really important. You don't want to just hire someone and then 3 months in, they leave, they're not capable of doing what they're doing. So it just depends. Timeline wise, for my company, it's usually, for my position, it took 2 weeks. I know that my boss and I have been talking about the people that they're hiring to help us with work, and taken them 2 months. So it just really does depend. Everything is so, there's no one shoe fits all. It varies all the time, which can be frustrating. But like I said, agency life is very different, and you want to make sure you're hiring the right people to get the job done. and make sure that you can like sustain in this industry instead of just hiring someone because you're desperate. For communications majors, when I was graduating, it was hard because everyone that I lived with and all of my friends were in finance or in med. They were doing something that it kind of communications is hard because it's so open ranged, and a lot of companies for entry level jobs like someone with a very for niche little like hobbies, or like they just want someone that fits exactly into this bubble. And as a communications major, your bubble is massive, and finance, your bubble is very, very small. You can only do so much with that. And sometimes that is challenging, but it's not a bad thing to be able to be versatile. That's one of the reasons I was able to get the position I had, is because I had such a versatile educational background, and it allows you to be very open. And in a project manager position, there is so much going on. You need a very versatile education and background instead of being everything being very, very niche. So things just take time. Don't put pressure on yourself to find things immediately. Things work out exactly the way that they're meant to be. I used to hate hearing that, but it is very true. You just have to trust that everything's working and allow yourself the time to find the right position, stay in contact with the right people, because everything works out exactly the way that it's supposed to. So you just kind of have to trust the process. It is based on your position. I think one that's really important as a project manager is you want to be someone who's very personable. Every single, like I said, I have 60 different people who not technically report up to me, but I manage and make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing in a timely manner. So if you have someone that you're reporting to, kind of, they don't technically report to me, but they I manage them. I make sure that they're following their timelines, that they're staying within budget. You want to make sure you're someone that they can trust and talk to and have an open dialogue with. There are things that happen, there's mistakes that happen. And if you can't have good conversation and an understanding person, it's not going to go well. So when I get on my meetings, I lead, I would say 95% of the meetings that I attend. I'm very open, I'm bubbly, I try to have a conversation with the people, make a personal connection. That's really important to do. There are some people who will just get on meetings and just not say a single thing. It's not going to bode well as a project manager. Your project manager is so important to the life cycle of a project, and it's very important to the brand. If your project manager is not someone who is, you want someone who is just very personable, because it just makes a huge difference. I've seen project managers who aren't, and their brand suffers slightly just because people don't necessarily want to get things done in an efficient manner for that person. If you're not someone that they can trust, they're not someone who's friendly. When you have a good connection with someone, when I ask someone to prioritize something, I know that they're going to follow through with that because we have a good connection. I know if there's a mistake or something needs to be updated, I can have a quick conversation with an individual and we can work through it together. So a project manager, you have to have a very personable personality. In an account position, account is the client facing part of my company. You need to be very personable as well, but you also need to be incredibly professional. You're not only representing the company, you're also, the face of our company. You're trying to make sure that we are being open and honest about our finances, about the timeline, and you have to be strong-headed. For both, any position that you have to be strong-headed, level-headed as well. Things constantly change and move, and it can be very frustrating when you were supposed to have an entire week to get something done, and now you only have a day. So you have to be level-headed and take a step back, figure out how you can move things efficiently. If there's anything that you can kind of cut corners around, what you can do. So As a project manager, the personality is someone who's very personable and someone who's very easy to connect with, someone who, when you get on, you know you have a really stressful day, but it's a smiling face, and you know that they're gonna do what they can to make sure that you are doing okay, not only in your one brand, but overall. You want someone who actually cares. And I think it's very hard sometimes to find fellow employees who care and don't just treat you like a robot. So in ad agencies, it's really important to be someone who is personable, who you can trust, who you know will help you when things just might be falling behind, when you're overwhelmed, and that they can take a second to just connect with you and try to figure out what they can do to help. My saying that I say literally all day during work is, let me know how I can help. Always trying to provide an assisting hand, something that will just let the team know that we're all working together. It's really important to remind the team that we're a team. Sometimes things don't go the way that you want, but we're a team, and it's important to work together and to communicate as best as we can together. So I don't really see it as an issue. I'm not writing out of the medical content in the pieces that I'm working on. I don't even review those. I just simply move it. I make sure that they're getting done in a timeline, in the timeline we have and the budget we have. So it does depend on your position in the industry. As an account manager, someone who's with the client, you might want some pharmaceutical background, but it's not essential. Um, the only individuals who really want some type of pharmaceutical background in the ad pharmaceutical realm, if you're in the ad agency, are copywriters or medical writers. So the people who are actually writing the content need to have some type of medical background. Beyond that, it's really not a necessity or important, truthfully. So, like I was mentioning, as a communications major, it's very versatile. And I think that's very important. My background in my education, I had so many different classes that I was taking, so many different skill sets that I had. And as a project manager, there's 100 things that you're doing that all of the educational background that I had at St. Joe's kind of nicely paved the way for me. So I have to do, I send giant like Excel documents about the status of our jobs all day. So just making sure that I am properly articulating what needs to get done in a document, basic English grammar, like those types of things. Um, Learning how to effectively communicate and run meetings. We did a lot of in communications in my classes, a lot of public speaking type of things. There's a public speaking class at St. Joe's that I highly recommend everyone take. Public speaking is essential, especially when you get into the corporate world. You'll be talking in meetings pretty much all day long. You'll be having communication with your coworkers all day long. You want to know how to speak in public. It's very different speaking in public with your coworkers than it is with your friends. The things that you would say with your friends isn't what you're going to be saying to your coworkers. So it's really important to understand how to properly communicate verbally. It's also so essential to learn how to communicate via like Zoom messages and emails and everything. So many things can get lost over translation. So learning how to properly communicate with someone in messages is makes a world of difference. If you can provide as much information as you can, trust me, it makes a difference. So those two things really, really helped me when I, like from my education background into work. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really, I think just being very versatile. Like I was saying, communications is very open minded. And I think that's another thing that kind of helped me as a project manager is I always went into things very open minded and was trying to find a way to make things a little easier or more understandable for the broader population than just like two people. And that's something that we always learned in communications is how can you effectively communicate this one thing to a bunch of people instead of just to like one little niche population. So I'm communicating with medical writers, people in the medical world. They think very differently than people who, are doing the arts. So trying to communicate to those two different types of individuals can be very challenging because they think one way and then medical writers think the exact opposite way. So it's how do you communicate to those individuals in a sense, in a way that makes sense to them. So truthfully, take as much as you can from communication, like the just whatever you can, learn how to effectively communicate. It will save you so much. Communication is so, so vital. I think the most important thing you can do is learn how to listen, and that will go a very, very far way. Learning how to listen and then taking a second to figure out how to respond, and not necessarily just listening to respond, but listening to figure out exactly what needs to be done. Listening is so important. A lot of times people are not really listening. They're just like, okay, what can I say back to that person? This is what's in my mind, but this is, it's so important to figure out how to just listen. And in interviews, you can tell if someone's listening to you or not. In meetings, you can tell if someone's listening to you or not. And the way that you communicate, the way that you present yourself in meetings also says a lot about you. I've been saying it a lot, but your communication skills are so vital, and it goes like hand in hand with your listening skills. So something to like, I'm constantly working on my ability to listen. That's probably 99% of my job, is listening to what needs to get done and then trying to find a solution to that problem. So that's something that's really helped me. And I've grown so much, not only in my personal life, but in my career, from being able to simply just listen. So something I challenge you to do is, when someone's talking to you, focus more on listening to what they're saying than actually coming up with just a response. Sometimes, like in work, I used to think everything needed a response, but it's sometimes just important to listen, and then you can go from there. Yeah, so I had a section for volunteering. I thought my volunteering was very applicable to what I was applying for jobs. Um, Another thing that I did was all of my internships. Make sure you're always putting all your internships and deleting anything that's just not applicable to what you're applying for. So the job you had in eighth grade or like in high school is not applicable typically to what you're applying to as an internship or a full-time job. My experience was, and this is something that if I could go back in time, I might have changed slightly. I just took whatever internships I could get because I wanted a summer job. And it wasn't until like junior year, I actually was like, oh, I should take a job that's actually in an industry that I like. A big piece of advice I would give everyone: figure out what industry you want to be in and find jobs in that industry. Once you're in a certain industry, it can be very, very difficult to change industries. Companies really like someone with tons of experience in the industry that they're looking for. So, say, for example, I was looking to switch to beauty. That's going to be really hard for me because pharmaceuticals is very different. It seems in my mind they should be similar, but pharmaceuticals is very different managing than it is in the beauty industry. So a lot of my internships were kind of just whatever I could get. I had one graphic design internship that I was doing, and it just wasn't necessarily enough for me to land a job in graphic design. But like I said, it worked out perfectly for me. I'm very happy in my position. I love being a project manager. So just be open to whatever comes your way. But if you really know deep down you want to be in a certain industry, work hard to find a job in that industry.
Does the role matter in the industry? I mean, obviously you want the general role to be in a direction you're going, but do you think industry is more important than role essentially in an internship?
So a lot of times once you land a job, companies really like having good employees. And a lot of times if it's a good employee, they can do any job. Obviously, I can't be a medical writer. That's one thing I can't do. I have no medical background. But if I had interest in going into the graphic design realm, I have background in it. I would have to probably, go down position wise as like an associate studio graphic design person, but I would still have the opportunity to do so because my company then saw she works really well in this part. I'm sure she can carry over through in this other position. So positions don't necessarily matter. Good companies will allow you to move around because they value employees. So as long as you have a good company, they shouldn't really care if you're wanting to switch positions within the industry. Piece of advice, I think I may have said this a few times, but just be open to whatever comes your way. You never know what may happen. Make really good personal connections with individuals. Like I said, don't burn bridges. You never know what will take you. It took me to land a very great job in New York City, and I'm living out a childhood dream. So don't burn bridges and just trust that everything's going to happen exactly the way that it's meant to. And the position you thought you wouldn't never land actually might be the best career decision you made. One other quick piece of advice is if you are looking at a job and you see a St. Joe's alumni works at the company, I would always connect with them and ask them for a quick, like 10 minutes to just tell me more about their company. Makes a very big difference. So if you see that, great, great, just little tidbit to do because it will make a huge difference.